Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580. Call in with your legal question now. I'll answer it here on the air. Oh, let's see what's going on. Castle Doctrine. Senate and the House here are going to expand your right to defend yourself. Of course, the District Attorneys Association says they're neutral on it now because they got some language inserted that says, well, here's what it says, folks. It basically says you can't defend yourself unless the other person shows you the deadly weapon, which means when that guy who pulls up alongside you in a car says, I've got a gun and I'm going to kill you, you can't do anything about it yet because under this new law, you ain't protected. So thank you, District Attorneys Association, for softening the Castle Doctrine law. Thank you, legislature, for selling out and creating an intermediate law that's not really going to save anybody's life and still going to be used against law-abiding citizens. Great. Ian, you're on WHP 580 with Carl. Ian.
Yes, can you hear me?
I gotcha.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. Hey, the guy here ahead of me turned the caller button down. We're going to have to yell at him. Shane, you tell him next week, don't turn the caller button down. We'll smack him. All right, what's going on?
I have an issue with my driver's license.
Okay.
I called a few months ago when you were on with Bob Durgan.
Yeah.
I'm the one that had the cerebral hemorrhage last September.
Okay.
And while I was in the hospital, PennDOT canceled my license for a bad check that I wrote, and I didn't realize it. Now, 2.5 months goes by through my recovery. I never got no notification of the suspension or whatever. And I had a doctor's appointment November 22nd. The doctor says, you're doing good. If you want to start driving short distances, you can. Well, on Thanksgiving Day, I got pulled over for not having my headlights on with the wipers, and the trooper ran my license and came up suspended.
Right.
So, long story short, I took a hearing. The hearing happened in February, and the district justice sided with the trooper. So I had just gotten my CDL license in the meantime, and days after I did that, I got a letter in the mail from PennDOT that they want to suspend my license for a year because I was caught driving on a suspended license when I didn't know it was suspended to begin with. Do I have any kind of recourse other than I filed an appeal to a higher judge, but do I have any kind of a defense? Or am I pretty much just...
Here's the short answer. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at everything because you always have a defense to driving under suspension. One of those defenses is you didn't know you were actually suspended, and PennDOT can't show that you were actually notified. Don't answer that question on the air, by the way. But long and short of it is here, you may also have what we call a sympathy vote, and there may be an intermediate resolution, which would be having you found guilty of a charge so that the government gets their fine and feels good about itself, but at the same time you don't get an additional suspension and we can clean up your driver's record. So I would strongly urge you to talk with an attorney off the air about something like this.
Yeah, I'm getting an attorney. He wants $500 and stuff to represent me, and money's a little tight, but I'm going to have to scrape it together and get it anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because without a lawyer, and I got the shaft.
Well,
the first time.
It's what's the old story about the divorce? You know, she got the gold mine and I got the shaft.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes when you're in court without an attorney. And I listen, everybody out there is like, oh, these attorneys are just going to tell you need an attorney. Well, guess what? 8 out of 10 times you're going to do better with an attorney. Can I do anything about the other 1/5 of the time? Yeah. No. I mean, 1/5 of the time you're going to get the same result whether you have an attorney or not. The problem is, if I could tell you which case that was ahead of time, I would tell you, you don't need to hire me. I remember sitting one time in a room, though, watching defendant after defendant go in to defend their speeding ticket and coming out angry, stomping away because it was one officer with like 7 cases. I was the 5th or 6th case. I went in. The officer looks at me and goes, what do you want? I said, no points. Okay, deal. My client left happy. And I remember thinking, if any one of these guys out here in the hallway had just said, hey, lawyer, why don't you come in with me? How much is it going to cost me? They'd have walked out happy. But anyhow, enough about tooting my own horn. Ian, make sure you get that attorney and get that cleaned up, okay?
I got one more question for you because this is really important to me.
All right, shoot fast.
All right. That trooper listened to Bob Durgan's show and stuff and heard me complaining about the ticket, and he's not willing to do anything to help me because of that.
Well, we'll talk to him. Now, yes.
He's taking it personal, I think, and long story short, I suffered a mental breakdown because of his shenanigans, and I'd really like to...
I don't think he's responsible for your mental breakdown, and I don't think he's going to be able to be sued for anything along those lines. All right, my friend?
Yeah. All right, good
All
enough.
right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
No. Well, that's what happens when you call in and talk about your legal problem on the air when the trooper's listening, I guess, huh? I mean, and there's this other guy who likes to call and tell us about his legal problems, too, and I was trying to shut up. Quit admitting to it. Debbie.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Quick question. If you get subpoenaed to go to a divorce hearing,
Right.
and the defendant is your brother, and you were subpoenaed by your sister-in-law, what's the penalty if you don't show up, or do you just show up and plead the fifth?
Okay, well, let me work this through for you. First of all, a subpoena comes from the court, okay? So it doesn't matter who asked the court to issue the subpoena. If you read at the bottom of the subpoena, it's not the lawyer who issued the subpoena, it's the judge of the courts, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So by disobeying it, you're disobeying a court order. That puts you in contempt. If you don't want to honor a subpoena, there's something called a motion to quash, which means you come to court ahead of time with a special motion and say, hey, judge, I don't want to be in court on this subpoena, and so I want it quashed. And then the judge looks at issues involving whether, you should actually be subpoenaed or not. But for most cases, the lawyer can make an argument that you're a relevant witness. You can't take the fifth in a civil proceeding because you can only take the fifth. Well, you can take the fifth in a civil proceeding. Let me back up there. You can't take the fifth when there's no potential harm to you. And what I mean by that is if they're going to ask you what you saw and it doesn't incriminate you, you don't have any privilege. Okay. Meaning you can't take the fifth, you have to answer the questions. And if you don't answer the questions, you can be found in contempt of court for failing to answer, and they can lock you up until you're willing to talk.
Okay.
And in fact, there's a guy, the longest sitting person on a contempt citation is in a divorce case. It's a guy who may have squirreled away $2 million, and he refuses to tell the court where he put it. And I think he's been locked up 7 years now, and he's still refusing to say where he put it.
Mm.
So my point is, you gotta honor the subpoena unless you get out of it. Number two, you got to answer the questions honestly. Number three, you probably don't have now. If they ask you a question like, "Hey, did you help your brother cheat on his taxes?" And if the answer is yes, I guess you have a Fifth Amendment privilege, and you can say, "I take the fifth." Okay.
Okay.
If they ask you, "Did you help your brother bury the body?" Now there's more subtle questions where that might tend to incriminate you as well. But my point is, if you're actually concerned about that, then you need to see a lawyer ahead of time. If you just don't want to give testimony against your brother, guess what? There's no such thing as I don't have to testify against my brother.
Okay.
Now, would I want to put you on the stand, have you testify against your brother? The answer is, if I'm a lawyer, and I am, I rarely call somebody to the stand who's friendly to a party, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I can't control what they're going to say.
Right.
Because you might not be nearly as helpful as I would hope you would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why they're calling you. All right?
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
540-0580. I'll see you guys after the break. Carl Rominger answering your legal questions. Hey, welcome back. Well, I'm very excited. Carlisle has a road diet going on. They're actually making it more hazardous and dangerous, both to drive and be a pedestrian in downtown Carlisle. And I, of course, am going to be sending them a lengthy letter with all 47 reasons why I think they've enhanced the liability situation. So I'm looking forward to all the biker meets doors, jogger meets doors. No offense, little old lady runs over biker / doesn't know where the lane is / UPS truck has nowhere to pull over lawsuits that are going to come out of this wonderful thing. They spent like $1.8 million to reline the highway and put some gizmos on the lights. And so for now, in the meantime, the Carlisle School District is just about, I think, $1.8 million in the red, even after all the cuts they're going to put in place. So maybe if we could just back up time, we could use the money to slow down downtown Carlisle to pay for undergraduate education. I'm not sure either one's a better use of the money. I'll let you decide. Zach, you're on WHP 580. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Zach?
Hey, actually just had a question about the counterfeiting. Not that I'm doing that, but this is actually a legitimate question. This is out of obviously the state of Pennsylvania. This is actually at the federal level. My question is, with all the this printing that's going on, and the currency is completely fiat, it's not backed by anything.
Right.
And now that they Ron Paul and his group issued that subpoena, and they got those documents from the Fed that showed between September 2008, March 2009, March 2009, $3.3 trillion was given to offshore corporations. I mean, couldn't that be characterized as actually illegal because there's no authority given to them to do such a thing? And so that's one of it. And then the second part is, isn't it illegal? Like, how can they just keep printing money with no backing? I mean, if someone would do that, they would go to jail. Like if a regular person did that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the short answer is, if you're authorized to print the money or create the money, like the Fed is, then they really can't. It's sort of like they really can't do it wrong, right? I mean, they make as much as they want. Now they have a duty, and they're supervised by Congress theoretically, and they have a head and whatnot. But nonetheless, I mean, they're not committing an illegal act by making too much money. We've sort of given them that control. So do you understand what I mean there?
Yeah, I guess I just had a question because there was an interview I was watching with Greenspan, the former head of the weapon of mass destruction before Bernanke was, and he said that the Fed didn't have to answer to Congress, and they didn't have to answer to the White House. And with all those hearings, when you had Henry Paulson, who was a former chairman at Goldman Sachs, and then he was giving them several $100 billion, and he kind of just really didn't stonewall the investigation. Same with when Bernanke was being interviewed by Bernie Sanders. He said, "Who got the money?" And he said, "Oh, I'm not going to tell you."
And I understand what you're saying. Here's the problem: the difficulty is in Venezuela. Okay. Who controls the bolivar or whatever their currency is down there? And the answer is Hugo Chavez, right?
Right.
And that's why their economy stinks, because he just prints them, does what he wants whenever he wants, sets rates artificially, controls the value of the currency because
that's what the Fed does.
Well, wait a minute.
Sure.
The Fed does it, right? And that's why the Fed is quasi-independent. And that's the idea, is the Fed has been set separate from the government because that prevents politicians from using currency, a fiat currency, to manage their own political fortunes. And that's the argument on why the Fed should be semi-unaccountable, okay?
All right. Well, I was just going to say, in closing, I was just going to say, well, the deficit spending going on, like the Fed allows that to happen, and the Democrats get their welfare state, and the Republicans and the Democrats, for that matter, get their warfare state. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. And notice, the government can only do so much, right? So what they do is they issue Treasury bonds, right? And they do crazy deficit spending. Imagine if they had complete control over the monetary system as well. There's no reason to believe. In fact, there's every reason to believe they would run it at least worse than the Fed does.
Right. Well, they're doing a good job. I mean, the Fed is now buying 70% of our T-bills, and that's the reason why we're seeing, gas at $4.50.
No, I understand, and I'm telling you, the Fed should not be doing what it's doing. And I'm not saying I'm 100% behind them. All I'm telling you is, imagine if they were 100% accountable to Congress. There's no reason to believe making them 100% accountable to Congress would make them any better. In fact, these idiot Republicans, best I can tell, what's the promise? Whether we're slowing down, not spending, the growth in spending. That's the best answer you're getting out of Washington right now. Yeah. And that's the only answer we're going to get.
$39 billion out of $1.6 trillion. What a joke.
We're slowing down the growth. Well, you know what? Guess what? That's like the guy in the emergency room coming out and saying, guess what? We're slowing down the rate at which your child's fever is rising. He's still going to die when it hits 105 in an hour, but we're slowing it down so he's going to live 45 extra minutes.
Right.
What the heck? All right. I got to let you go.
All right. Hey, thanks, Carl. Appreciate it.
All right. 540-0580. Amber, what's going on?
Hi. Okay, well, about 2 years ago, I was out of work, and I had a car that had no insurance on it. I didn't drive it. It just sat in my parking space. It ran. It didn't have insurance, so I didn't drive it. Well, it was like 4:30 in the morning, and my ex-boyfriend took the car to go to the store. He didn't have a driver's license, and the car's not insured, and I was asleep. And when I woke up, he wasn't there. I noticed the car was gone, and I got a call from the police saying that he fell asleep while driving, knocked over a telephone pole. Needless to say, I got some charges, and he got some charges, and fines were paid. I tried explaining to the judge that I never gave him permission to take the car, and the judge basically said, well, you lived together, and he had access to the keys, so, you're just going to have to deal with it. So I dealt with it. Well, a couple weeks later, I got something in the mail from PP&L saying they were suing me for $5,000 for the cost of the telephone pole.
Absolutely.
So what they ended up doing is I couldn't afford an attorney. I called Mid-Penn Legal. They advised me that if I couldn't pay anything or if I couldn't stick to what I said and didn't have an attorney, just don't even speak to them at all. So I kind of just let it take its course. Now my boyfriend and I have been separated for over a year, and PP&L ultimately, I think, split up the cost of the telephone pole. They sued me for $3,000 and sued him for $3,000.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, somebody told me if I would take my ex-boyfriend to civil court and sue him for the amount that I'm being sued for, I could get out of the amount I'm owed.
Well,
is that true?
Only if you can collect. If you have a judgment against you, you can't do anything about that. You could sue him for it, and if he pays you, great, reimburses you. But if he's basically, based on what I'm hearing here, he's the kind of guy that probably is not going to have two sticks to rub together, right?
No, absolutely.
So pursuing him is a waste of time.
Well, they're telling me that they're going to come in because I can't pay this money, they're going to come in my house and they're going to have a sheriff sale and take all my furniture and the car that I have now.
Yep.
So
which is why you always got to fight those judgments. However, you still have the greatest protection known in America left, which is called the bankruptcy.
That's true. But for a person that's never had a credit card in their life and really doesn't have that much debt, I don't think that'd be a very smart thing to do.
Well, guess what? Your credit's already goofed up. You got a judgment on your record, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. You just let them sell your car, let them sell your TV then. That's your other option.
Now, can I sign my property over? Can I put my property in somebody else's name?
Not legally. And there's a statute that allows us to set that aside if it's fraudulent. And if the sheriff's already been there and levied, then it's definitely a crime.
Yeah, nobody's been here, and it's been over a year. They basically threatened, and nobody ever came.
Yeah. But that judgment's just going to sit. What's that?
You think maybe they'll forget about it?
No.
No. It eventually
what they're going to do is
me.
just leave that thing sitting at the courthouse, and someday when you get your act together and decide to go buy a house or do something that involves some kind of a financial check, you're going to be told you have to satisfy that judgment before anybody will give you money.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for your help.
All right, Amber. Good job getting rid of the X.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
540-0580.
Lou.
Yes.
What's going on, brother?
Oh, good, Carl. How are you?
Good.
Hey, I got a question here. A local heating company in Harrisburg, let's say Spreaker Township, filed a civil complaint for a matter that I had some dealings with this company. But the incident or the action that occurred took place in Duncannon, which is Perry County. Can that be filed in that jurisdiction, even though the incident or action took place in Duncannon area?
Well, let's see. General rule, I can sue you where you live, meaning where the defendant can be found. So the plaintiff has the choice of a couple different venues. One is where the defendant can be found.
Okay.
The other is where the transaction occurred. Or in a failure to pay case, it's where the payment was due. Or in a breach of contract case, it could be where the contract was created.
Okay, then it would be where the payment is due. I received, I can explain a little bit of what happened and why it was filed in Spreaker Township. I do live in Lower Paxton Township, but can I explain a little bit of what happened real briefly and to go into? I had called this heating company, about giving me an estimate to start up a propane furnace, and that's all that was done. They come to, I called their company. They called their tech guy or service guy or sales guy to come out, gave me an estimate.
between $500 and $550
Mm-hmm.
to start up a propane furnace. So we got done. They said it might take maybe 4 hours, he said, or half a day, if that. So
Well, long and short of it, let's just get to this. You weren't satisfied with their service, so you didn't pay them, right?
No, I was satisfied with the service. It was 500. I thought it was 550 tops. I agreed to it, and nothing in writing. There was no written contract or nothing.
So you thought it would cost too much money?
Yeah, and I got a second bill, the same amount, $547 a month later, and I thought it was a duplicate. And I called the company, and I say, this is a duplicate. And they said, one girl wanted to check into it, got back to me, and said that the guy said that just pay it. It's to do the heating service. And I said, wait a minute. I said, it wasn't. It was 3 hours. I got the bill. It was 3 hours. The first bill was $547. I got the second bill, let's say November 2010. It was the same amount. It's like $1,100 to start up, and it wasn't. I disagreed with that amount. I was $550.
All right. Well, I'm going to fall asleep here. So what's the question?
Well, I don't want to feel like I'm obligated to pay that second bill because the first one, the agreement was.
Well, that's why they sued you. You guys have a fight over whether you owe it or not.
Okay.
And that's what the judge is going to decide.
Yeah, well, that's the only thing I just disagreed with, how there was no written contract. In the meantime, I did file with the Attorney General's office for the Consumer Protection Act under contractors, not putting anything in writing because I asked for the contract a week later. But I did take that course right now, but I do have a hearing coming up. But
all right, brother. I understand what you're saying. The answer there is hopefully you've got your correspondence down and everybody understands what happens. The question is whether you actually owe them or not. And I don't know the answer based on limited information. I got to go to break. 540-0580. See you after the break. Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Make sure you go to weekendappointment.com and claim your free will. It's www.weekendappointment.com. And if you don't have access to a computer, just call our office and Tammy will make sure, or somebody will make sure you get the free will kit. But I prefer you go to weekendappointment.com and join there. That's kind of the quid pro quo. But I also understand if you don't have internet access and you want to give us a sob story on the phone, we'll certainly take care of that. We have a Harrisburg location now. It's over on Pine Street in downtown. So I want to let you guys know that. So if you need an appointment in Lancaster, Harrisburg, and spread the word, because I think the Harrisburg location is going to really help a lot of listeners out. I mean, I don't mind meeting with you guys in Carlisle. That's where I'm usually located. But I also go to Chambersburg, and we'll be available in Harrisburg and Lancaster. So that way you don't have to travel anymore. And to get hold of the office and schedule an appointment, just go to weekendappointment.com, look up our contact information, shoot me an email. I've got Eric and Vinny and Rob. And who else we got in there? Drew. And working hard. And trust me, all of them are competent. So if I'm not immediately available, make sure you talk with those guys. We can definitely help you. A lot of times we work cases as a team. So I just wanted to remind you all those locations, though. Make sure you spread the word about the Harrisburg office if you would. Bill, what's going on?
Yes. Hello, Carl.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, no question, just wanted to thank you for putting me in touch with Kurt, your brother at Wolfgang.
Oh, okay.
And he came and picked my truck up, and, well, his friend, associate, or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad they were able to do that for you.
I wanted to say thank you very much.
Hey, Bill, thank you.
That helped me a lot.
Hey, great.
So you have a great wet weekend.
Yeah, I will.
But that's all I wanted to say, Carl.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
My brother has a scrap metal business the other end of the state, but he does some work here in the mid-state. So if you want to, if you go to weekendappointment.com, you want to shoot me an email, you got some scrap metal or something you want to get rid of, he can help you out with that. And I guess that's what Bill wanted to thank me for. So, Tom, you're on WHP.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good.
I have a question regarding my brother. He's in a lawsuit, and I've been looking over his paperwork. Now, they haven't gone to trial, but they're filing papers going back and forth.
Okay.
And the first thing is it says the statute of limitation has to be raised by new matter, is what the judge said in the one thing.
Right.
And so they got to go back and do that, his attorneys. And then there's something called the gist of the action, where they're trying to throw out the fraud charge. This was on a contract where he purchased some property, and the gist of the action. My brother's telling me if they throw out the fraud charge, they can do it out on that.
Well, the short answer: your brother is your brother the defendant or the plaintiff?
He is the person that is suing.
Okay.
But the other attorney is saying because of the gist of the action that they're going to get rid of the fraud.
Yeah, and it sounds like these are preliminary objections you're looking at.
Yeah, that's what I looked at the other day.
Okay, yeah. Well, first of all, preliminary objections are a defense attorney's dream, and what I mean by that, in all civil suits, when you do defense work, you file preliminary objections. It seems, and as a result, they're usually dismissed. The complaint is refined, or every once in a while something gets tossed out. But I wouldn't read too much into them. As long as the plaintiff's attorney is semi-competent, you should be able to get past preliminary objections. If they're trying to raise statute of limitations on preliminary objection, you can't do that. That's clear. As for fraud, well, fraud is a special kind of thing in the law, and as long as there is accusations of fraud sufficient in the pleading, the judge should allow it to go forward. I think what you're saying here is they're trying to say, well, if you really read it, it's not actually a fraud, therefore you should dismiss that.
That's what they're saying, but the guy, you know it's a fraud, but then they're saying, well, it's because of the gist of the action or whatever they're calling it.
Gist of the action?
They're saying it's not a fraud,
right.
So therefore they want the fraud count thrown out.
Yeah, they're saying it's
the fraud count. He's figuring that there's not going to be enough really to sue for because for what all he's going through.
Well, and the reason that the fraud count is so important is a judgment under a fraud count has different protections in bankruptcy than a straight contract action. And that's what's really being fought out here. But I wouldn't read too much into the preliminary objections. Your brother's got a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
All right, don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, brother. Yeah, I think he's just reading too much into it. But listen, just because the other side says it doesn't mean it's true. In fact, I always joke, if you read both sides of the lawsuit without reading the other side, you always be like, wow, these guys have a great case. In fact, if it's written right, both sides will make it sound like they have a great case. That's why we have judges. Eric, you're on WHP 580.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Carl.
No problem.
My father retired to Florida, and the house that we grew up in, he added my brother and me to the deed.
Okay.
And the house is paid off. Now, I was wondering, my brother, he just has minimum car insurance.
Mm-hmm.
If he would get in an accident and it was his fault and we would get sued.
He would get sued, not you.
Right, he would get sued. And he doesn't have any money. Could they come after our house now?
They can come after his interest in the house.
Could they make us sell the house?
The short answer is kind of. Somebody could buy his interest.
Okay, I mean, because we live in the house.
I understand that. And I'm saying, but here's the answer. I ain't going to buy his interest. I don't want to be your roommate. And so it really makes it relatively worthless. But it is at play. Now, here's the bad news. Once they get their foot in the door, then they can partition it and force a sale, at least under Pennsylvania law. And am I getting from you that this house is not in Pennsylvania?
No, it is.
Okay, good. Okay, it is in Pennsylvania.
Right. And
okay.
Like I said, I was worried if he would get sued.
He should carry better insurance. Nobody should carry the minimum.
The house that I've lived in all my life.
Yeah, nobody should carry the minimum.
Okay.
All right.
Now, just one more question, sir.
Sure.
Let's say he did get in a bad car accident, and before anybody sued or anything was filed, he'd go down to the courthouse and remove his name from the deed.
Well, there's a statute out there that says that transfers made in contemplation of a lawsuit can be set aside as fraudulent as well. And we routinely see this in nursing home issues where somebody goes, you know what, looks like Dad's headed for the nursing home. Let's transfer the property. 6 months later, Dad moves into the nursing home. Well, those can be set aside. In other words, they were done to prevent a creditor or potential plaintiff from reaching the asset.
Right.
Doesn't work.
Okay. All right.
All right, dude.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Let's see here. 540-0580. Got somebody messaging me on Facebook right now. I want to know what we charge for a bankruptcy. Let's see here. Who's next? Ray. Ray, what's going on?
Hey, Carl. How you doing?
Good.
I was out of town yesterday. I was in a minor fender bender.
Okay.
And no injuries or anything. I'd like to settle it cash. And I'm getting calls from both insurance companies, mine and the other party.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering any tips on how to talk to them, and I just don't want to get taken over.
Well, the short answer is, are they saying you're at fault?
Yeah, and I probably was at fault.
Okay, and the other your insurance company's got a claim made against them already?
Not sure about that.
Okay.
I haven't returned their call yet.
Yeah, once they have a claim made against them, I don't think they're going to let you step out of it.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure. And even if they let you, they're still going to hold it against you because they're still going to be aware of the accident. So it's probably better to let them pay at this point.
Oh, okay.
That's my short answer. Obviously, you can't speak to them fraudulently or anything, so you got to tell them the truth as to what you recollect. As for the other guy's insurance company, I mean, talking to them, I would just talk to your own. But I don't think you can extricate yourself completely out from under the insurance issue at this point. And because they're aware of it, they're still going to hold it against you, so you might as well get the benefit of the coverage.
Oh, okay. Good point. How about getting multiple estimates on the damage? Is that something I could ask for or anything like that?
Yeah. Although, you know what? Here's the answer. Again, the likelihood of the payout, whether they got to pay, and I'm just guessing here, but let's say the payout's $3,000, $4,000, or $7,000. I don't think the insurance company's going to look at you any differently.
Okay.
So as long as they're satisfied, it's probably only them. They probably just want your statement at this point.
Okay.
All right, brother.
Hey, thanks a lot.
540-0580. I'll see you guys after the break. Hey, welcome back. I am enjoying this weather immensely, trust me. Nothing better than driving over here to the studios in the pouring rain. I had about 10 cats and 10 dogs bounce off my windshield, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. Okay, who's next? 540-0580. Dan, what's your legal question?
Well, actually, I don't have a legal question. I finally got to watch your supposed DUI video.
Oh, okay.
Your traffic stop, let's put it that way. And I had a question for you. The audio wasn't tremendous, but it seemed like at the end of the video, the police were trying to get you to move your car somewhere else. And at the end of the video, it appeared you went back in, got some stuff out, locked the car up, and walked away. I think there might be a message in there for someone, and I'm kind of curious about that. If you're stopped for supposed DUI and they decide to let you off, is the message in that just lock the car up, walk away so they don't try it on you again later further down the road?
Let me tell you what's going on there. I guess the answer is he makes me get out of the car to come sign the citation, okay? Which he absolutely didn't need to do. But what he's looking for at this point, I've refused a field sobriety test. I've refused a portable breath test. They figured out I'm a lawyer. I haven't answered their questions about where I'm coming from or where I'm going. So he has no probable cause to arrest me for DUI at this point, okay?
Okay.
And obviously I must not have been so grossly intoxicated. Well, I wasn't intoxicated, but I mean, obviously I wasn't like falling down inside my car either. Therefore, he knows that this video is not going to support arresting me at this point. So he forces me to come out to sign that and puts me in front of the camera and wants me to sign it because he's hoping I sway, I grab the car, I do anything that he can then point to as a basis for dragging me in on a get my BAC, which I was really hoping they would do. I actually am hoping that they would do this at this point, but of course they don't. So then I sign my signature, and Shane's probably seen my signature. My signature looks like a doctor's signature on steroids, okay? Mm-hmm. So when I signed my signature, I could see his eyes. I could see the officer's eyes. I thought for a minute he was going to be like, okay, this guy can't even sign his name. But then when he looked at the license, I saw him compare the two. And he's like, oh, crap, I still don't have anything I can point at to arrest this guy. And that's when he says to me, for the safety of Pennsylvanians, would you please move this car if you've been drinking? And what he was trying to do is get me to acknowledge that I've been drinking by taking an action. And so, again, he's trying to get something to get his foot in the door because he really wants to arrest me, I believe, at this point, but can't. And I told him no. And then, of course, I think I said something along the lines of, I'm not answering your questions, and now you want me to do something affirmative to answer a question by action instead of voice. If you want to move the car, officer, you move the car. So then what I did was, at some point, I was like, listen, are we done? Can you guys go now? I'm just going to go over here and stand and just enjoy the night air, kind of, you know. So I went over, locked up the car. I just decided at that point it was worthless. This guy's just going to chatter all night. So I went over, I forget what I got out of the car or put something in the car. Of course, I was reading a newspaper earlier, but I think I just put something in the car, locked it up. And notice I went to the passenger side, not the driver's side. I didn't want any mistake that some claim, well, he looked like he was going to drive or something. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And then this happens right over down by if you were to look to the left of the video. And by the way, folks, if you want to follow along, if you want to see this video, go to weekendappointment.com and you can see it. It's just scroll down the front. You'll see it's called "See Carl Stopped by the Police." It's got terrible audio, but it's a great video to watch if you just want to get a good chuckle. Anyhow. At this point, to the left, you would see the boat launch down by Fort Hunter. On the right is the old abandoned shop that used to be out there, like a mini mart or a general store, and that's just to the right. And I just went over and stood on the verge over by that until they finally left.
Well, I guess my point was I took a message from that maybe I shouldn't have, that. You know, if you're stopped for suspected DUI, park your car and get a ride home, walk home.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because you don't want to give them any foot back in the door. No, I agree with that 100%. I just waited till they were cleared out of the area. Now, I knew I wasn't DUI, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason I was really wanting to arrest me, because I think my BAC would have been so low. I can't say it would have been zero, but it would have been so low that, I mean, it could have been zero at that point. But I wasn't 100% confident it would be zero. I was just confident it would be way below the legal limit, that I was going to really enjoy the fact that the epilogue would be, that I would have such a terribly low BAC. Plus, I really wanted to be cuffed and put back in the back of the car because I really wanted to have that experience, I
was shocked that they let you leave your car there, because in the video, it looks like you're parked on an exit ramp.
And I'm not, because it looks like that. But if you remember, if you go up Front Street, before you get to Fort Hunter there, and then it eventually merges into 322.
Okay.
So that it looks like an exit ramp, but I'm actually just on the main road there, because just a short distance up, it's going to merge. I had gone up. I wanted to see if they're catching any catfish there that night, because I was thinking about dropping a pole in the water myself. So idiot me goes up there, and my favorite part is the officer's telling me that I was speeding, and I was saying, no, I'm in the flow of traffic. There's cars in front of me. And I remember him saying at the roadside that there was no cars in front of me. But if you watch the video, guess what?
Oh, there clearly was.
It clearly was. But guess what? Without the video, I never would have had proof of that. It would have been the officer's word against mine. And guess whose word was the only one verified by the video?
Yeah, the minute you crossed that line, just the hair, he was waiting.
Yeah.
But that was interesting. I saw you lock up the car, lock up the car and walk away, and I was like, oh, okay.
And the big problem I was having with him was he kept telling me to move the car if I'd been drinking.
Okay, that part I couldn't hear. It sounded like he was telling you to move the car, but we couldn't hear the part about if you'd been drinking.
Yeah, and what he was doing there, I really firmly believe it, is if I had moved that car into the parking lot, which is just across the street, he'd have been like, okay, now I've got a positive affirmation that he's been drinking, and I'm going to combine that and arrest him.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Now that is a valuable piece of information. I didn't know they'd play that trick.
Oh yeah, and there was a pile of police officers there. The other thing is, once you start invoking your rights, they start multiplying. They clone
they made
themselves.
You wait forever. The video went on and on and on. I'm thinking, man, are they ever going to do anything?
Did you hear him talking about me on there? Oh, this guy hits him.
Yeah.
Because it's the same.
Officer so-and-so, he did that to Officer so-and-so.
Well, it's the same police force, okay? And they pulled me over a couple years back for tint. And I had my tinted windows down, and he says, it was in my 96 Pathfinder, okay? And he says, you need to roll your window up so I can test your tint. And I looked at him and said, well, no, I don't need to do anything. Just do whatever you need to do. And, a couple hours later, they let me go. And then a few weeks later, I beat all the charges. And I guess they've been looking for me ever since.
Well, I enjoyed the video. I wanted to tell you that immensely. But there's just that question about it that I probably could glean something. I don't expect to be out drinking and driving, and I don't even really drink anymore. But in the day, that might have been very helpful.
And here's the problem. Let me tell you something. The machines that they use to test your blood and to test your breath are so inaccurate, and the scientists will actually tell you that they're so terrible that you can get a DUI when you're well below the legal limit. So if anybody out there's ever on a jury and you just want to sit there and believe it, that those machines are so accurate, that the state police's little blood test is so great, when you find out what the true science is, and a lot of defendants can't afford to bring that science to the courtroom, you would discover that you can get a DUI when you're well below the legal limit.
So your advice would be always demand the blood test, especially if you think you could pass it.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even demand it because even those are horribly inaccurate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dude, the science on this stuff, terrible, terrible, terrible. Particularly where you're talking about it being the difference between being a .17 or .08, where most people aren't even intoxicated at a .08, or the difference for a second offense DUI, the difference between losing your gun rights, whether you're a 1.6 or a 1.5.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, dude.
I thought in the hospital they were accurate, but thanks for that information.
No. Listen, don't ever never refuse the test either. That creates a whole other series of problems. But what I'm just saying is you don't really want to give them the opportunity to arrest you or give them the cause to test you.
Okay.
Gotta go. That video is at weekendappointment.com. If you guys want to see it, just go to weekendappointment.com. Sorry, guys, Ray, Josh, call back next week or just go to weekendappointment.com. Shoot me an email, put your question there, or call my office. See you next week.